What's up, NFL fans? Another episode of Under Center. It's all about the quarterback. And in this one, it's something that most football fans just relish, enjoy. It's Christmas for football fans, and especially if your team needs one, a quarterback. And of course, we're talking about the NFL draft. It's a proverbial candy land for every football fan, regardless of what position your team is drafting or what their biggest need is. But if it's quarterback, it's always the $1 million. It's the money position. It's the position that everybody's talking about, and where they go, when they go, who they go to. It's always up for debate. It's always up for discussion. It's most of all, it's fun to talk about. And in this episode, I'm here to talk about the teams that need them and the guys that are going to be there. Strictly first round quarterbacks, no third, second. That stuff's too much. Don't have enough time in a video. But identified some teams that probably need a quarterback and some of the quarterbacks that might fit what those teams do. But it's kind of hard because usually if you're drafting up high, you're drafting a quarterback. That usually means new GM, new head coach is drafting said quarterback. So it's kind of hard to do a system fit. But on to the first, I believe, obviously, without saying, Jacksonville Jaguars will be drafting a quarterback first overall in this draft. Just a question of whether it's Marcus Mariota or Bridgewater. Mariota's gaining a lot of steam as of late. Of course, playing in that high octane offense, his size, his scrambling ability um, makes it look so easy and effortless. It's a very system friendly, very quarterback friendly system that he plays in. But irregardless, he's still making the plays. Hasn't lost a football game in quite a long time, and he's a good player. He's a young guy, and Bridgewater the same thing. Has that big, you know, bowl game against Florida under his belt. Is very consistent. He's had a few stumbles. I mean, the loss against Central Florida will be a little bit of a knocking point for some of his detractors, but again, a guy that'll definitely be taken within the first couple of picks. It's whether it's kind of up for debate whether it's like a position where it was Washington and Indy, who takes RG3, who takes Andrew Luck. It was kind of written in stone that Andrew Luck was going to be a Colt, and he is. Washington traded up for the guy they knew was going to be there, RG3, and that's where he is. And this instance, it's no clear cut favorite at one. Um, it's possibly Minnesota picking second at right now, possibly, well, Tampa Bay also. And does Tampa Bay fall in love with Mike Glennon? Do they let Mike Glennon continue to develop, be their guy? He played his best game, albeit a loss. He did look good on the road against basically a house of nightmares for most NFL quarterbacks in Seattle, but he played pretty well against a really good Seattle defense. So do they continue to try to develop with him? Or if a new regime comes in, they're going to want their own quarterback. It's as simple as that. So it'll be interesting to see where they go. I mean, Glazers don't really fire coaches in season; they do fire them off season. But if they do they take a quarterback? They're in position to take one of them right now, so that's why I'm bringing them up. Um, any of those two quarterbacks fit pretty much any system, and from there, it's kind of a crapshoot. There's three other quarterbacks that I've kind of seen as first round fits. And there's a couple others that might sneak in the bottom half of the first round, late second, but I'll talk about them later. On to the next team identified that obviously needs a quarterback, the Cleveland Browns. Unfortunate what happened with Hoyer, we all know. Just the Whedon and Campbell juggling back and forth because of Campbell's injury. They've pretty much totally closed the book on Brandon Whedon. Just his age, the fact he wasn't drafted or brought in by the staff, totally plays against him. His inconsistent play, the fans just have totally rebelled anytime they see, hear, or even feel his presence. And that's what happens. It can get really ugly when a team totally, a fan base, I should say, really loses faith in the quarterback and forget about the team. Then it's a total fire sale. Them, I see that as a potential landing spot for Zach Mettenberger from LSU. He's that say statuesque. He's a better athlete than he looks. He's a big guy, stands tall in the pocket, really rips the football down the field, in the mold of a Philip Rivers. And he's a guy that I could definitely see in Norv Turner and Chudzinski, just like, oh my God, this is the kind of guy that can play in these elements. Big, strong, drive the football down the field guy. Is going to stand in the pocket, deliver, take the hit. Another team that might be looking at him too, Arizona. I just don't see Carson Palmer as a guy that team can build around and compete with in that division, or just in general. I just don't see it. He's too inconsistent. He is what he is. He's an older quarterback. He's a statue. He throws costly interceptions and just doesn't come up big when he needs to. I just has never been the same player since that knee injury back in '05. He just really has never been. It's unfortunate, but here we are going on 2014. It's time to kind of close the book on him, and that could be another potential landing spot for Zach Mettenberger. The next quarterback is going to be, he's going to have as much fanfare, as much hype, and just as much outside interest as the guy who's taken first overall, whoever that is, Johnny Manziel. Wherever this guy goes, there is going to be a complete, it's going to be Tebow-esque in a lot of ways. Wherever he goes, I think he's a better football player than Tim Tebow. Definitely a better pro football player than Tim Tebow, even though he doesn't have the size. I talked about him a little bit in my Case Keenum video about them being similar style quarterbacks, the scrambling, the getting the ball downfield and just making plays with their legs when they have to. Playing in that like pistol spread offense really looks good for quarterbacks, but that's what a lot of quarterbacks do in the NFL now. I think he's definitely capable, but he has that flair to him, and a lot of teams are going to see him as a guy that's going to draw. He's going to be a big ticket item. He's going to sell jerseys. He's going to sell tickets. He's going to sell season tickets. He's that kind of guy. He brings that kind of impact to an organization, and a team that could look at him. Any one of those teams that don't take a quarterback, I don't see him going to an Arizona. He's a tough call. He really is. I would have said Philadelphia, but the way Foles played yesterday, I know 7 touchdowns, huge, but he's got to be more consistent. He's having a great year, but he's got to stay healthy, stay consistent. I think they're going to move away from Vic and totally just let Foles play, probably let and develop Barkley behind him, and kind of move away from Vic after yesterday, especially. Manziel's kind of a tough landing spot for me. St. Louis, they need some buzz in St. Louis to me. I just think Bradford is a guy that he's just what he is. He's a guy that was a first round pick in 1993. The stand in the pocket, doesn't have that element of play breakdown, give you something extra, that little bit of extra. I just think he just doesn't have that it to him, and I think Manziel does. He would be a huge addition in St. Louis, in my opinion. Johnny Manziel kind of stays close to home in Texas. St. Louis gets a huge bump, and another team that would be interesting to see if they take a quarterback of the lower tier variety. I'm not saying lower tier in the sense they're not as good players. I think Aaron Murray is definitely worthy of a first-round pick. He's got a lot of grit, a lot of toughness to him. Brett Hundley is another guy that's going to be looked at in the first round from UCLA, possibly a Chicago. Do they want to sink that money into Cutler? They've gotten some good games out of Luke McCowan. He's played really well. Trestman, like I've stated in my other video about the NFC North teams, he's known as a quarterback guy, can develop quarterbacks. Him and Ermey want their own guy. Cutler is over 30. Do they want to sink a whole bunch of money into him? That's going to be an interesting topic, but those are the 5 quarterbacks that I've pretty much picked out as guys that are going to be in that first round class. And you know how the draft is, everybody. If you've watched it long enough, teams that get needy, teams that are thirsty, teams that are hungry, They go up and get guys. We've seen it in the past. We've seen the Christian Ponders, the Blaine Gabberts, the Lockers, the guys that we thought were going to slip and fall, just jump up and be like, oh, they're first round quarterbacks. Just and that's in recent history, not to mention past history. But yeah, it's definitely a topic that's going to be talked about and debated until the draft happens. Now it happens in early May. We're still 6 months off, but for teams that are like the 0-7, 0-8 variety right now, that's what they have to talk about. So curious to hear your opinions, your thoughts, which quarterback you want your team to pick up, whether you want your team to stick with the guy like in Philly or in Tampa Bay, or you want to go out and get another quarterback. I'm curious to hear your questions and your comments. Thanks for watching and subscribing.